Roseanne, welcome back.
Thank you so much. I've learned so much. I'm very excited to be here.
I'm so pleased. I hope you've been able to implement a lot of what we've already discussed. And today we're just going to expand on what we have set already as a foundation.
Perfect. It looks yummy.
I'm glad you think so. This is one of my favorite topics to discuss. The reason being is that fats and oils are very often misunderstood, and we don't always know how to include them in our diets and which to include in our diets.
I agree 100%. There's so much information out there, but to actually use it every day is very, very different.
Absolutely. So there have been so many different extremes when it comes to fats. There have been many eating plans which have suggested using too much fat. There have been some that have suggested if we reduce it completely that would be more beneficial. And the truth is that there's a very healthy balance between these two. So when we speak about fats, do you have anything in mind that you can think of off the top of your head? What do you think of?
When I hear the word fats, there's two things that pop into my head. The one is that we are told it's what makes us gain weight. And the other thing that's difficult for me to separate is what are the good fats and what are the bad fats.
Okay, very important information, and we're going to separate exactly those topics today. So first of all, to address the reason that fats are seen as being so causative of weight gain is because naturally they are the highest energy contributor to the body. When we eat a fat compared to a protein or a carbohydrate, we are getting that much more energy in. This does not mean they're not good for us, but the truth is if we eat too many of them, they do get stored as extra fat in the body, and this can lead to chronic illnesses and to gaining weight and obesity. So, when we differentiate fats, there are two broad categories that we can divide them into. The one is saturated fats, which typically come from animal sources. These are in general solid at room temperature. And the second broad category is unsaturated fats. Have you heard of those?
Not as often.
Okay. So unsaturated fats are then divided into what we call polyunsaturated fats and monounsaturated fats. And these are more liquid at room temperature and in general come more from plant sources. So it's hard to separate completely because there are some animal products that have a degree of unsaturated fats in them, and there are even some vegetable or fruit products that have a small amount or even a larger quantity of saturated fat. Coconut is an example of that. So when we think about unsaturated fats, and in particular the polyunsaturated fats, why these are so important is because they are broken down, this is a lot of information, into two more categories known as the omega-3 and the omega-6 fatty acids. I'm sure you've heard of those.
Heard about them. Again, I need some more explanation.
Okay, all right. So we need both of these. The reason that the omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids are called essential is because our bodies cannot produce them themselves. So we have to obtain them from food sources. Fats in general, and in particular these polyunsaturated fats or the more unsaturated fats, are responsible for the cellular structure for every single cell in our body being able to maintain its membrane, which keeps everything together. So what these cell membranes do is that they allow the transport into and out of cells of all the nutrients that a cell needs, and they need to be as liquid and fluid as possible. When we eat a diet that is more saturated in fat, it causes a hardening, and that is where we try to reduce saturated fat in our diet to prevent this. The omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids, which are incredibly essential, and we do need both work differently inside of our bodies. So I'll give you an example from all the foods that we have in front of us here, what falls into which category.
Right.
Okay, so I've specifically chosen omega-3 fatty acids, which are your chia seeds, which we've discussed in previous talks before. Okay, these can be added into oats, into smoothies, onto salads. They can be included also into soups and stews without people even being aware of them. Then these are flax seeds, which there is a little bit of doubt about, and sometimes they are given a bad rap in the media. The truth is that because of the nature of these oils, they can be broken down and degenerated very quickly. And it's important that they are stored adequately, which is in more of a cool and dry, dark place, instead of in direct sunlight, because that will cause them to spoil. And in order to extract the true benefit from these flax seeds, they should be ground before we eat them in order for us to absorb the omega-3s. Walnuts are one of my favorite snacks to have, and I generally have this with some fruit, or I include that also in my oats for breakfast in the morning. What that helps me to do is boost my omega-3 in between meals as well. There's obviously lovely salads where we can crush walnuts and add them in and give that extra crunchy texture, which is fantastic.
Are walnuts the only nuts that will provide those omegas?
So there are also hazelnuts that are in that category and a few others, but these are the ones which are the highest in omega-3 value. The omega-6s, which I'm sorry, I actually don't have examples of here, and it's not because I hate them, but I'm just focusing on omega-3s today, are oils like sunflower oils and corn oils and margarines, and these are typically used a lot in commercial products, a lot in processed products. Where the problem comes in with eating too many omega-6s, and they are still important in a small amount, is that our body, when we are in a state of inflammation, if we are eating too many omega-6s, it keeps us inflamed. So let me try and take a very complicated subject and break it down so that you can understand it a little bit more easily. When we are ill, when we have a virus or a bacteria or something that happens inside of our body that our body has to fight from an infection point of view, it is important that our body's inflammation process is activated so that we can attack the threat and remove it.
Okay.
What happens when we are inflamed for an extended period of time is that our body does not switch that process off. And both the omega-6s and the omega-3s both can feed this pathway. And if we are eating too many omega-6s, it causes our body to stay in the state of inflammation for an extended period of time. And what we know to be true is that all of the inflammation that we are seeing today is leading to so much chronic illness. So we want to push and include more omega-3s in our diet as opposed to omega-6s, so that we can reduce the state of inflammation that we are all suffering with, even if we're not really so aware of it, in order to reduce all of this chronic illness that we're seeing on a regular basis.
So even someone who's not aware of it, if they switch to increase their omega-3s and decrease the omega-6, they're going to benefit from
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
There's omega-6 in so many different products that we have to actively try and include omega-6s.
Okay.
There's another way of
You
boosting...
mean omega-3?
Yes, of course, I'm boosting omega-3s. There's another way to improve your omega-3 profile and the anti-inflammatory profile, and that is not only through omega-3 sources, but also through monounsaturated fatty acids. You've heard of that?
Yes, but it's complicated.
Okay, here again it is complicated. So the typical, which I've got some examples of here, we can think of when it comes to monounsaturated fats is the oily fish. For example, your lovely salmon over here. We think about products like olives. We think about olive oil in general, which is one of the foundational elements and fats in the Mediterranean diet. And we also think about things like, one of my favorites, your unsweetened peanut butter. And how we can include more of this in your day is, for example, to add, as I said, your chia seeds into porridges and into maybe even making, if you make your own crackers, you can include these kind of seeds and the flax seeds, the walnuts into soups, into salads, as I discussed, eating salmon more frequently during the week. Even tuna and other oily fish are also important. Other oils like krill oil are also in that category, as well as flaxseed oil as well. So here, in order to improve the omega-3 component and the monounsaturated fat component of this meal, I'm going to add some extra olive oil over there. Again, we need to be careful that we're not adding too much, even if it's a healthy fat. We can add some olives onto the salad as well. Again, we don't want to overdo it, especially if we've already added oil. So about 3 of those. And now, if I'm going to have a snack, one of my favorite things to do is to take a lovely piece of green apple, also high in fiber, and dip it in your peanut butter, and that becomes your healthy snack.
Delicious. Thanks. I'll have
There
that.
you go. Oh, careful, it's dripping. I'll have a taste.
Always ready for healthy.
So this is just one way of being able to include it on a daily basis. Again, as I want to just reiterate, delicious. It's very important that when we include fats in our diets, that we include them, but we don't overdo them. When we cook and we prepare food, we want to use as little oil as possible in the cooking process. And the truth is, if we add oils cold afterwards to food, they retain their properties better as well, and this is much healthier for us. So one of the ways I get around this is in more of a dry frying technique if I'm going to use to heat food, where I use some water and spices to fry onions and other food in with a very little bit of oil if it calls for it. Otherwise, I rather prefer to add oil cold afterwards to a meal. And this helps to preserve the properties of the healthy fats and ensure that we are not degrading them at all before we actually get to eat them. The other thing to bear in mind again is that even healthy products, when we eat too much of them, can be damaging and harmful. So everything in moderation. In general, I try to ensure that you're not including more than 2 portions of fat at either a lunch or a dinner time, and a little bit spread out throughout the day to ensure that you are still getting your fat-soluble vitamins that come with it. Your vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin K, they are all very important. And that is one way to try and just keep balance in check.
Very delicious, very informative. Thank you very much. I'm going to continue with my apple.
Enjoy. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Justine.